Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most unusual fights to take place in the new Congress, one that resulted in an unprecedented removal of the House Republican Conference chair from her position in leadership. That ousted chair was Representative Liz Cheney, Wyoming's lone representative and the third-ranked Republican in the House of Representatives. And her removal is not only significant for the GOP in Congress, but also potentially illustrative of the Republicans' future strategy going forward. But I'll explain that later in the video. First though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. That way you can support us and ensure that you never miss a video. While you're at it, make sure to check out the TLDR Global channel, it's linked down below. Our sister channel where we cover big topics like the current situation in Israel and Palestine, as well as other topics like which countries are the most and least democratic, and the drop in global fertility rate. Subscribe to TLDR Global by clicking the link in the description. Anyway, back to the US. Last week, Republican members of the US House of Representatives met to do something they've never done before: successfully oust their conference chair from leadership. Now, the conference chair is admittedly not the most prominent of positions. It is, however, the number 3 leadership role in the conference, after the party leader and the party whip. The chair doesn't have a ton of official duties. Their job is mainly to oversee some of the more mundane parts of running the House Republican Conference, as well as to chair meetings of the members and coordinate policy priorities. Basically, the chair's job is to keep their conference orderly and in as little chaos as possible. Since the 38th Congress convened in 1863, the GOP has had their own formal leadership in the lower chamber, and they've managed to keep things pretty stable up until now. In the 80 Congresses since the House Republican chair came into existence, this is only the third time that Congress will see multiple chairs in a session. During the 41st Congress, Representative Nathaniel Banks led the conference in an acting capacity in the absence of Robert Schneck. And then former NFL quarterback Jack Knepp resigned from his chairmanship during the 100th Congress to focus on an ill-fated campaign to succeed Ronald Reagan as president. Ironically, Kemp's successor was Vice President Dick Cheney, father of Representative Cheney, who we'll be discussing today. The list of chairs also includes other notable figures like former President Gerald Ford and former Vice President Mike Pence. Anyway, Ms. Cheney entered the House in 2017, promising to restore America's strength and power in the world, create jobs, expand industrial and agricultural power, and lower taxes. She quickly made a name for herself, becoming the conference chair in only her second term, succeeding Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Cheney has generally fallen into the usual neoconservative stances of the Republican Party, backing US military power and focusing on strengthening national security and the American business sector. However, she's also been outspoken in her criticisms of now former President Donald Trump, earning the ire of her co-workers and constituents. Her criticisms of the former president came to a head earlier this year, as she took issue with the narrative that the 2020 election was stolen, calling out her fellows for backing the lie. Following the January 6th insurrection, Cheney voted to impeach Trump for his role in convincing voters to storm the Capitol. This vote proved consequential, signalling a fracture in the party's elected membership, and leading to a reckoning in the members of the conference, as 9 other Republicans joined the chair in voting for impeachment. So, in February, pro-Trump Republicans led an effort to oust Cheney from her chair, but this effort failed 149 to 61. However, her state party was less forgiving, voting to censure Cheney on February 6th and demanding that she step down, while falsely claiming that the insurrection was led by members of Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Cheney then doubled down by suggesting a criminal investigation into the former president's actions and announcing that she would not support him if he runs again. This break from the new party line further inflamed her opponents in the House, and a second removal vote was called, this time backed by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. On May 12th, Cheney faced the second effort to remove her as chair, and this time the motion passed by a voice vote, meaning that it's unclear how each individual member voted. Following the vote, Cheney remained defiant, warning that the former president would be willing to unravel democracy to come back into power, and that he poses an ongoing threat to the republic. She also confirmed that she intends to run to retain her seat in 2022, and she did not rule out a campaign for president in 2024, noting that Trump never again can be anywhere near the Oval Office. Cheney, now free of the restraints of having to lead her party, struck back at the members who ousted her, accusing McCarthy of not leading with principle, and the conference as a whole of looking backwards. On Friday, House Republicans voted in Cheney's replacement, Representative Elise Stefanik of New York. Generally a political moderate, Stefanik rode into the number 3 House leadership role on her support of former President Trump. Her generally moderate voting record did earn her some jabs from House Republicans, some of whom even compared her to more leftist Democrats. But ultimately, Stefanik faced little enough opposition, especially after receiving endorsements from Trump, among other leading Republicans, meaning that she was able to comfortably take over Cheney's old job. But what does this mean for the Republican Party as a whole? Well, technically not much. Cheney, before her removal, held a leadership position that most Americans had never heard of, in a chamber of government that most Americans don't like. But symbolically, the fall of Liz Cheney, a pillar of Bush-era conservatism in the House of Representatives, and the daughter of a former vice president, means everything. What exactly everything is, though, depends on how you choose to interpret the events of the past weeks. In one interpretation, Cheney's fall from leadership marks another step in the direction of a Republican Party based around a single personality, Trump. Cheney, after all, was by no means a moderate. She's a conservative in every sense of the word, and people saw her as such for most of her career. And it's only on the issue of Trump that Cheney has, in a notable way, slipped from the party line. But that issue was enough for her to lose her role in leadership, and to a representative generally deemed to be more political moderate than her, no less. There is, of course, another more generous interpretation. In this one, the Republican Party is finally catching up with the times. It's purging itself of the more establishment figures from another time, and making way for a new era of the party. Arguably, we're already living in that era. Cheney was just a remnant of a bygone kind of politics. Which of these interpretations you believe will largely come down to your partisan loyalties and your level of cynicism towards politics. But there is one thing connecting the dot between the two, and that, of course, is Trump. The simple fact underlying all of this is that Liz Cheney lost her job as the chair of the House Republican Conference because she attacked Donald Trump. So, what does this mean for the future of the party? Well, in terms of specifics, who knows? But we do know this. Whatever the path the GOP is walking down for the next few years, it will do so alongside Trump and his brand of politics. And those who object that, well, you saw how that went for Cheney. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release more videos like this one. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make our videos possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.